Taming the Demon by Alme Chapter 27, To Gambler. Okay, so that might have been a lie. Nobody actually noticed that Sena had a split personality. Just serious rage issues. Here's what happened. Agon said something about the Christmas bowl dream that Karita, Musashi, and Hiruma shared being a happy game over, because he's a prick that way. And that incited Demon's anger to such a level that everyone instinctively took a few steps away from him. When the monkey tentatively asked him what was wrong, and Demon took a stab at talking like the original Sena, using Hiruma-san instead of Yoichi, and the blonde was grateful that there were so many idiots on the team because he was already going to have to deal with one hell of an interrogation from the firmly disbelieving Musashi, Jumonji, and even Anazaki. Oh, now she notices things. But there was an upside to Demon's anger. Shinryuji noticed it too. Now, a step back or two would normally make so little a difference in a football formation that nobody would see it, which is why Demon had missed it when Shinryuji had taken those steps back in response to Musashi's kick. Add another step or two from Damon's rage. Now we're on to something. This could be just what the Devil Bats needed if they could pull it off. An onside kick would be perfect, but how to tell the team without Shinryuji noticing? Hiruma decided to put one of his better skills to use. He gambled. The blonde turned to his players and told them it was over. He told them to just be safe, not get injured, so they could play next year. He told them that there was only a 0.01% chance of victory. Then he stepped back and watched, waiting to see how many of his players had paid attention over the past months. They didn't disappoint. Just as Musashi's foot connected to the leather, the lot of them had fallen into formation as if they were shared a single mind. Chaos descended onto the field. Damon scrambled and Shinryuji panicked, and for a second it appeared that Yamabushi had seized the ball. Only when he stood, it was Komusubi underneath him, nose bloody and clutching the ball. It was Damon's offense, and Hiruma decided it was time to up the ante. He brought Yukimitsu out onto the field. The baldy near about had a heart attack at the difference in sheer pressure between the bench and the field, but he seemed to adapt pretty quickly. The confusion over its Shinryuji was palpable as they tried to figure out the reasoning behind Yukimitsu's presence on the field. Agan sent Ikkyu to mark the baldy for the first play. The play in which the baldy tripped over his own 2 feet. Thankfully, Ikkyu marking Yukimitsu shifted the Shinryuji lineup and left the idiot open to receive a pass. Ikkyu evidently believed the baldy was trying to mess with him somehow and tried marking him again. The second year didn't trip this time, but the difference in ability was blatant, and Ikkyu swiftly reported back that Yukimitsu was so laughably weak there wasn't any need to mark him whatsoever. Idiots. Yukimitsu recognized his option route in an instant that rivaled Hiruma's own brain, and he went for it. Unfortunately, Agan and Ikkyu were called geniuses for a reason, and they were on the ball within 3 feet of his starting position. Not that it mattered when Yukimitsu scored Damon's first touchdown. The second year would later confess that for a split second he hadn't believed he could win the confrontation, but decided that he would win, if only so that Agan and Ikkyu, who had been competing against each other at that point, would recognize him as an actual player. Musashi did his part by putting his bonus kick through the goalposts, and Damon's energy level surged in response. It was the beginning of the counterattack. The next play used the onside kick as a decoy for a real kick, and if it weren't for Unsui, the Nagas would have fallen completely apart in their scrambling. Unfortunately, Unsui made up for all the leadership and people skills that Agan lacked, and kept the Nagas functioning as perfectly as ever, ceasing their scrambling and giving them succinct orders that they followed immediately. Agan caught the ball and ran it back to the center. It was Shinryuji's offense. The Kongo brothers were about to resume the dragonfly, and Hiruma could only come up with one way to counteract it. And Sena's legs weren't going to survive it. The kid would have to blitz Agon for every play, whether he had the ball or not, to disrupt the Agon Unsui hotline, and it would probably kill him before the game was done. The old man made a point to tell him so, as if he didn't already know. As if Sena didn't already know. But the kid did as he was told, lined up and set to blitz Agon. He was ruthlessly cut down and Shinryuji gained 12 yards. Hiruma kept pushing the small brunette, urging him forward, pitting him against the monster that was Dreadhead. The next play began. It started the same way the previous one did. The ball was hiked to Agon, Sena blitzed, Agon cut Sena down. The difference was that the running back wasn't finished yet. Hiruma was at a poor angle to completely read Agon's lips, but it didn't take a genius to figure out that he probably made another crack about the tournament being done for Damon. That comment, just like last time, woke up Demon. And Agon noticed. The Naga still gained 4 yards, and Agon would brush it off as nothing when EQ asked him about it, but there was no mistaking that the Dread had just lost 30% of his available time to find a receiver. The blitzes were working. Therefore, Shinryuji decided to mix it up even further and have Unsui hand off the ball to Sanzo for a run through the center, only to have Sanzo back pass it to Agon. Demon wasn't having any of that. Once again, the rage persona forced Agon to notice him. From his position, Demon could only see the Dreadhead and didn't have a clue where Sanzo was or what he was doing with the ball. However, Demon had no problems reacting to Agon's movements. So when the Naga player made to receive Sanzo's pass, Demon simply reached out and knocked the ball off course without so much as glancing at it. God, Hiruma loved that kid. Before the blonde's mind could be fully consumed with the ridiculously monumental thought it just produced, he hurriedly shoved it in a box with 1,000 locks on it. This was neither the time nor the place for serious emotional revelations. Agon cut Sena down and the ball was still rolling around free. The monkey had already been moving toward where the ball would be when Sena intercepted it, so it seemed he would get there first. EQ wasn't having any of that and quickly shot Manta down. Then the Kuri Hammer was born! The look on Agon's face as Garita body slammed them all. Hiruma was going to scour every camera he could find until he found a shot of it. The absolute shock was just too good to pass up. Jumanji was the first to escape the scramble, grabbing the ball and booking it down the field to Shinryuji's end zone. Agon decided, fuck that, and took up after him. The Dreadhead got the blind player about an inch from the end zone, and Hiruma figured that such effort was enough, considering it was the first time Jumanji had touched the ball in a game. Jumanji disagreed. Hiruma was just realizing that the pair was still standing over there when the ref called a touchdown. The moment was soured as Sena's knees began to give out on him. Hiruma called a timeout for Doboroku to put some ice packs on the chibi. However, the monk couldn't be mind-gamed out of continuing to play the dragonfly because he knew what it was doing to the small running back's legs to keep up with Agon. Play resumed. Sena continued to do battle with Agon, switching back and forth with Demon so much so that Hiruma could no longer keep track of which one was doing what. Pretty sure Demon invented the arm maneuver, but it could very easily have been Sena's panicked flailing. Agon recognized Sena as a proper player now, which was good in that he was laying off the taunting now, but bad in that he was putting more effort into defeating the smaller player. It was actually Kurita who managed to finally stop Shinryushi's offense using a Sena-inspired arm move that shoved Yamabushi into the dirt and sacked Unsui. Too little, too late. It was 21 yards to Damon's end zone, an easy kicking distance. With the point gap widened from 18 points to 20, it was pretty much the last nail in Damon's coffin. The only thing left to try was a super long pass. Manta would have to defeat EQ once and for all, or the Devil Bats were dead in the water. The first play they used Yokimitsu's option route to score a first down, but after a timeout from Shinryuji, more ice time for Sena. That was it. They had 35 yards to go and no time left. Given the circumstances, Hiruma couldn't fault everyone and their mother for believing that Damon would use a Hail Mary pass. But it should have been common knowledge that the devil didn't ask God for favors. The Hail Devil pass was perfectly designed to pull EQ and Manta into a purely catching battle, and for a second it looked like EQ was going to win with an interception. But then this look came over the monkey, as if he wasn't really there anymore and his body was moving solely on instinct. While the two were still in the air, Manta simply reached out and took the ball from EQ. His yell of, "Catch Max!" barely nearly drowned out the ref's call of a touchdown. There were 8 minutes left, and they needed only 2 more touchdowns. EQ came over to the Damon bench and asked for Manta's name. Even better, EQ's movements were now colored with fear of Manta repeating his insane maneuvers, causing him to simply fall to the ground instead of running with the ball. With his efficiency cut down, Shinryuji was forced to limit its passing game. Agan once again decided, fuck that. The dreadhead took the ball from his brother, literally said, "Give it!" ripped off Sena's devil by ghost, and gained 20 yards for Shinryuji. Just in time for Sena to collapse. Hiruma used Damon's final timeout to stage an argument with Musashi, who really didn't need to drop blood, and stressed the apparent need to have Sena mark Agan. Only for Sena to steal the ball from Utsui and leave Agan completely unmarked for the following play. The dreadhead was mad! He immediately took out after Sena, got up, even got in front of the kid somehow, and... game over. Those words were beginning to look like a trigger to wake up Demon. Hiruma wondered if it was the words themselves, or the fact that Agan was saying them, and resolved to test the theory later. Either way, Demon took complete hold of their shared body and attempted to stiff-arm Agan twice before faking his stiff arm and shifting into a devil bat ghost. Agan cut up again, only this time from the angle of his head, and how he extended his left arm for the ball. He couldn't see, let alone react to Demon's arm shoving his helmet into the dirt. It was Ice Shield 21's first touchdown of the game, and how sweet it tasted. However, with 5 minutes left on the clock, it was Shinryuji's offense, and Damon still needed one more touchdown to tie up the score. Unsui, who earned his body weight in Hiruma's respect this game, decided to burn the remaining time with a super offensive impossible to read play. The golden dragonfly. Not just the two Congo quarterbacks, but EQ as well. And so it happened that by the time that the ball returned to Damon, there were 97 yards to Shinryuji's end zone and 58 seconds left on the clock. There were a couple ways to stop the clock, but this was going to be tricky. They needed consecutive first downs, but Shinryuji kept forcing the players inside the lines, meaning Hiruma had to keep spiking and thus losing attacks. However, using Yukimitsu and the in-motion tactic, they continued to inch forward little by little, starting and stopping time as needed. Until finally, with 18 seconds left and 59 yards to go, the blonde threw a long pass to the monkey. Manta knew that EQ would tip the course of the pass and caught it anyway, and Sena raced up behind them to take out the safety. Everything went perfectly. Except Agan had read the play and was also waiting for the monkey. Manta didn't stand a chance. Damon had all of 4 seconds to get across almost 40 yards and set up for a spike. Kurita couldn't make it, time ran out, and Damon had lost. And then Manta's own personal miracle occurred. The ref called for the timekeeper to turn the clocks back 4 seconds to the time at which the holder of the ball had gone out of bounds. Manta had reached out mid-tackle and grabbed a piece of dirt from outside the line and saved Damon's skin. Didn't I tell you? I won't lose to anyone in Gutton. Fucking A. The monkey saved their butts. Since heaven decided to bequeath them this last chance to attack, Hiruma decided to pull out all the stops and use even the audience in the strategy. He used in motion, had Kurita directly snap the ball to Sena, who then back passed it to Hiruma, who went running for the end zone. Agan chased him. Hiruma could hear the smirk in the Dreadhead's voice as he told the blonde that he wasn't going anywhere at a speed of only 5.2 for the 40. Hiruma knew Agan could hear the laugh in the blonde's own voice when he replied that there's this thing called practice, and it can shave 0.1 seconds off a person's time. Hiruma scored a touchdown. The score was 35-34, and there was no time left on the clock now. All that was left was the try for points. If Musashi kicked it in, the resulting tie would send the game into overtime, or they could go for the direct win with a 2-point conversion. Sena's legs wouldn't be able to take overtime. Since its inception, the Shinryuji Naga's team had never once allowed a 2-point conversion to succeed. It was a lose-lose situation, the safe play into overtime with a sudden death gamble 2-point conversion. Like true double bats, they took the gamble. They faked a kick, then made it look like Hiruma was going to break through the middle, only to have Hiruma back pass it to Sena. Brat fumbled it, son of a bitch! Thankfully, Karita single-handedly toppled Yamabushi, Agan, EQ, and some pig-faced linemen, giving Sena the opportunity to grab the ball and all but roll into the end zone. The score was 35-36. Damon's victory.